Conducting today's interview is Rabbi Josh Feigelson, the president and CEO of IJS. Josh joined us in February 2020 after serving as Dean of Students at the University of Chicago Divinity School. Josh's first book, called Eternal Questions, Reflections, Conversations, and Jewish Mindfulness Practices for the Weekly Torah Portion, was published by Ben Yehuda Press in 2022. Joining Josh is Rabbi Shira Stutman. Shira is a nationally known faith-based leader and change maker, with more than 20 years of experience motivating and inspiring groups large and small. She is the senior rabbi of the Aspen Jewish Congregation and co-host of the top-ranked PRX podcast, Chutzpah, in which she provides Jewish answers to life's contemporary questions and helps listeners build lives of meaning. As founder of Mixed Multitudes, a consultancy that exposes diverse groups of Jews and fellow travelers to the beauty and power of Jewish life, tradition, and conversation, she is currently working on a variety of projects, running programs that support Jews in having less reactive and more heart-centered conversations about Israel, teaching in progressive institutions about anti-Semitism, and serving as scholar in residence for projects that build the next generation of philanthropic leadership. Her book, out now from Experiment Publishing, is called The Jewish Way to a Good Life: Find Happiness, Build Community, and Embrace Loving Kindness. So everyone, that's the formal introduction. The less formal and extra special part of the introduction is telling you all that Josh, Shira, and I met 24 years ago in the Wexner Graduate Fellowship as we were each starting our various rabbinical school programs. It feels really remarkable that over the last 24 years, we've had the gift to accompany each other through the tragedies and the marvels of this life, and to witness each other's growth as Jewish leaders and teachers. So personally, it feels like an incredible goodness to be together today and to celebrate your book, Shira. Mazel tov. So I want to encourage everyone to ask questions during today's event. To do so, click on the chat icon on the bottom of your screen and address your questions to Q&A. Now I hand it over to my dear friends and colleagues, Josh and Shira.
Thank you, Miriam. And Miriam, I just want to say, I know how much of an effort it was not to burst out laughing because of the relationship that the three of us have and that the two of you have because you went to rabbinical school together. So thank you. That was beautiful.
And also happy birthday, Miriam.
And happy birthday. I was getting there.
Oh, sorry, Josh. Sorry.
No. It's okay. It's okay. Happy birthday. And we're so grateful that Miriam is choosing to spend her birthday evening here with us. So thank you. Shira, hello. Welcome. It's so great to have you here.
This is so much fun.
It's so much fun. All right, I'm going to dive right in. The link to buy the book is in the chat. For those who are interested, I just pointed to the chat on my screen. Pointing.
I got it.
And also just a reminder to just re-emphasize what Miriam said. We do want to get to your questions. I prepared some questions, but we hope to get to yours as well. In the audience, in order to do that, please do not send your message to me because I'm going to be busy looking at Shira, but our ACE staff member, Molly, is on the Q&A. She's Q&A tonight. So when you see Q&A, you can address questions to Q&A. They'll go to Molly and they'll get to me ultimately. All right. So Shira, this is not a golden age for very much. It's what it feels like these days. Well, I don't know. Anyway, it doesn't feel that way. But it does seem to be something of a golden age for American rabbis writing general books about Judaism. Shai Held, Sharon Brous, Danya Ruttenberg have all been guests in this space here in recent years to talk about their books. Your book is the latest wonderful addition to this club. I'm curious what led you to write it and what do you want people to take away from it?
Yeah, that's so funny. Okay, so first I just want to say Thank you, Josh, so much. Thank you, IJS, for having me. This is a real honor and privilege, and I'm very excited for this conversation. So I'll just begin with a little bit of gratitude. Also, like I feel like Lahavdil putting me in the same sense as so many of those other great rabbis, but that's such a great question. Like, why this moment? Part of it is because we're all in our 50s. And so we're getting to the space where, like, Gen X, well, we still have all of our brain cells are still all in order. We have our ideas, but, we're really in middle age. And so we need to get our ideas out into the world. So all by way of saying, Josh, I'm looking forward to your next book whenever it comes out. But I don't know. I wonder, as I was listening, I wonder if there's also something about this sort of like decentralized, debuildingified moment that we're living in sort of during and post-COVID and probably before then as well. It's like we recognize that being Jewish isn't something that only happens in a synagogue or a Jewish community center. It's actually not even just something that happens in the home. It's something that happens like on the metro or at the supermarket or in your place of business. And so my guess is like these rabbis who wrote these other extraordinary books, that they are books that you are meant to take with you wherever you go.
Mm.
Someone wrote that to me. It was apropos of something we were talking about for the Chutzpah podcast. They said, thank you so much for writing a book. I'm not connected to a Jewish community, and I find reading Jewish books to be my main form of spiritual practice because it's totally in my control. I can pick it up and read it when I want and put it down. My mother and her voice is not in my head. It's just like these authors in my head. And so I get to be and do and learn about Judaism in the way that I want to.
Mm.
I wonder if that's a piece of it.
It could be. It could be. So that speaks to the moment. I'm curious. So in your specific book is very you, and we'll get into like the specifics of it. But I'm curious to hear more about like what, aside from, okay, we're in our 50s, so like it's time to write. But aside from that, what specifically, this is a different kind of book. It's a how-to guide. I mean, that's like the first words. And who do you intend the audience to be? Who's this for? And what do you want them to, what do you want them to take away?
Such a great question. Josh, this was one of the questions that we dealt with the press after I had submitted the book. But really, the book was originally intended as to go in the self-help section of a bookstore. And I know that like self-help for some of us feels like anathema. It feels cheap. It feels, but that's really what this book was for. It wasn't written to be put in the religion section, which I'm sure, look, as long as it's in a bookstore, I don't care what section it goes in, but that's really the truth. So the book was written for anyone who is looking to build a more meaningful life. It doesn't matter if they're Jewish or not. And, it's in some ways, the Jewish knowledge, I think we took out, I had a whole passage in it about Fiddler on the Roof. And I explained what Fiddler on the Roof is. And it's like anyone who lives anywhere on the East Coast will know what Fiddler on the Roof is. But the idea is that this book would be for anyone who lives anywhere who might not even know Fiddler on the Roof. Because it doesn't, I choose to believe, and I think research bears it out, that most of us want to live a meaningful life. Like we are meaning-seeking creatures, human beings. And so something that can help us figure out how to do that easily, right, could be useful to lots of different kinds of people.
How did that grow out of your work? I mean, your career, right? And most recently, before your current stuff, you spent a lot of time working at Sixth and I, and we'll talk about Washington in a little bit. But I'm curious.
We have to?
Well, yeah, maybe. I don't know.
We can. What's that?
But I wonder how much that orientation. I mean, because it's really striking. I mean, it was something that really struck me reading the book. Is like, oh my God, she's really making no assumptions here. Like she's explaining that matzah is this thin bread that Jews eat at Passover, which is the holiday that commemorates. I mean, like, very basic stuff. And that's not to say that an advanced reader can't get stuff out of it. I got plenty out of it, right? But I find that it's a really striking choice because it's almost like, Shira, you're saying, this is Judaism being in the public square alongside every other meaning-making system, and I'm gonna put our stuff out there in a way that it's available to anybody who's, let all who are hungry come and eat. So does that grow out of your work?
Yeah, that is my life's work. You just like articulated it in one. I call myself a proselytizer for Judaism, and I know the word proselytizing like gets Jews all, I don't know, like
Bent out of shape. Yeah.
we get all worried about, but like I really believe that Judaism is objectively, not uniquely, but Judaism is objectively can help us lead better lives, right? That all evidence to the contrary sometimes that religion can actually build a better world. And so if I believe that, then I need to sort of put my goods out there alongside Soul Cycle or the opera or, the orchestra or whatever it is as a way that people, or hiking, as a way that people actually can find meaning in their life. And that has been the entirety of my career, right? Like, as you well know, Josh, I am a kiruv rabbi. Kiruv is, this Hebrew word, which basically means outreach. And it usually is associated with Orthodox people doing outreach to non-Orthodox Jews, right? But basically my career has been outreach to the world. Anyone who wants to come in can come in. And not feeling that people have to, be Jewish to do Jewish, but that Judaism has a lot to offer.
Yeah. Yeah. That's really powerful. We'll come back to that. I want to, so getting into the number one thing, I wrote to you about this. I texted you about it while I was reading over Pesach.
I'm excited for this
right?
one.
Okay. So one of the things I noticed that I found like most intriguing in your book is that you really go heavy on responsibility and duty. On page 65, I wrote this down. On page 65 in the chapter on happiness.
Yeah.
Right? The way of happiness. The book's in 10 chapters and each way is sort of a way in, right?
It's a very easy read.
As
one woman said in one of my book events, she goes, "It's barely a book; it's a pamphlet." So, it's
200 pages. It's a book. It's a real book. It's got a good organizing principle. So on page 65 in this chapter on happiness, you write, "Here are Judaism's top 10 attributes for a life well lived: justice, grace, humility, repentance, service to God, Torah, acts of loving kindness, judgment, truth, and peace. Happiness is not found on this list. What we see over and over again are acts centered on caring for others, not ourselves, ones that are connected not just to the present moment, but to all that has come before and all that is yet to come," unquote. So I texted you after I read that a couple of weeks ago, and I said, this is a very frum list. Right? And it reflects, it's a very religious list, and it reflects the ethos of the book. And so I'm really curious to hear you say more about this strong emphasis on duty and responsibility, which I was frankly a little surprised by.
Yeah. Well, what do you think Morai Kaplan would think? Do you think, given
you went to RSC. I
never understood what
I'm not qualified. I'm not qualified to talk about Kaplan.
All right, look, I'm gonna answer this question in like two lanes, right? One lane is like Shira the rabbi, and one lane is like Shira the person who's been Josh's friend for 20 whatever years, right?
Yeah,
and so,
great.
Josh, as your friend, that like I am from at heart. Like I, spent many years as modern Orthodox Jew, and I like sort of reluctantly left Orthodoxy because I found this amazing man to marry. And so like I still in my kishkas like carry that orthodoxy with a capital and a lowercase o. So like that's the piece that, and to a certain extent, I do feel like I have to give Chabad a lot of credit for my career because I was living with my husband in San Francisco. We were in the process of moving to Philadelphia for rabbinic school, and we decided to take a year off to travel the world. So this is
but you write it, and you write about that. Yeah.
Did I write about that in the book?
You did. Yeah, you talked about that trip. But go on.
Oh, that's so nice. I'm glad because sometimes I get like competitive instead of like grateful to Chabad and their work. But that's a different conversation.
But so finish the thought about Chabad. Sorry.
So we're traveling around the world for like 10 months, 11 months, whatever it is. We go to like 15 different countries, and in every country, what do? On Shabbos, we go to Chabad, right? We spend, Pesach in Kathmandu. We spend Rosh Hashanah Rosh Hashanah, we were in Vietnam, and so on and so forth. And this idea of like, welcome in, we are of service to you is one that I took with me into my career. And so like there is a frum part of me.
Mm-hmm.
And also I really do believe that the core of Judaism, as I understand it, obviously 2 Jews, 700 opinions, the core of Judaism is service to community. It really is what you have to offer to your community, and God willing, what your community has to offer to you as well. You could, to me, community, Hashem, they are somewhat interchangeable.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, not entirely, but somewhat. And so I do believe that like we are a people of service.
Yeah.
I also think, and I wish, and then can I ask you what you think? Is that how we do this? But I also do think that like, it's so countercultural in America right now to orient yourself toward a life of service toward others. It's just, America is we are self-involved. I mean, that also like as a country, but also as individuals. And I just feel like I want Judaism to stand. I believe that Judaism in some ways stands counter to that.
Yeah,
But
it absolutely does. I mean, what's interesting, I mean, this should be a whole conversation the next time we have coffee, is each of our relationships with Orthodoxy, and what our journeys have been. It's interesting now. I mean, and we'll get to like the next question is going to be about like, this is IJS, but like, one of the very first principles here is like, it's all voluntary, right? I mean, like we take the notion of what Yitz Greenberg would call voluntary covenant. I mean, but like that's like one of the first rules that we say, like there's genuine freedom in this program. You are not, you don't have to be here. And I think that's a corrective, right, for a lot of guilt-based Judaism that's been laid on people for generations, right? Yeah. So it was striking to me to like read you saying so much about our duties and responsibilities, which I was like, I love it. Like that speaks to me. But it's interesting how it works. It feels like it would work in tension with the goal of this, broad engagement with as many people as possible. But you're saying, no, that's an intentional choice. I'm putting out a countercultural choice to say yes to responsibility, yes to showing up, yes to community, yes to service, right? All of those things.
Yeah. And Josh, your point is so well taken because, as Miriam said earlier, like for, I don't know, 11 years, I was a rabbi at a place called Sixth and I in Washington, D.C., as you well know. And Sixth and I is a spiritual community that serves primarily people in their 20s and 30s. So I was pastoring to millennials, basically, for my time there. And you know what word millennials hated more than any other word? Obligation.
Yeah.
Like that was a word that I had to take out of any drash that I gave. Responsibility was second. Obligation was first. Responsibility was second. And so what I did learn how to do is talk about those ideas, but not use those words. And I guess it feels a little disingenuous as I'm saying this to you, but it wasn't. It's like when you talk about community, you can talk not only about what you put in, that's the obligation and responsibility, but also what you get out. And you see the research bears that out as well. Like when you participate in community, when you do acts of chesed, you are not just serving someone else. It actually comes back to you as well.
Right. It feels like you and Sharon Brous are very aligned on that. That's like, that's so much, I think, of her book, right? You. I think it's very similar. All right. So let's shift over now. This is IJS. This is, this is not your local JCC. So I want to get to the question of spiritual practice.
Okay.
Because that's a term you use a lot in this book. And my sense was that you're using it in terms of behavior and action. Right. Yeah. Strikingly, this only hit me later, and I'm really curious about this. The book includes chapters on chesed, right, loving connection, love, celebration, body, money, education, community, justice, Shabbat, and mourning. It does not include a chapter on prayer or contemplation. So here's my question: is 2 parts. First, I'm curious about the choice not to include a chapter on prayer, when prayer services are such a major part of how so many Jews interact with Judaism. And second, I want to hear about your own inner practices that help you live the life that you outline in this book, which I know you live. In the later chapters, you talk a little about breathing and a little about meditation, which of course are, that's our stock and trade. But I want to give you a chance to expand here and tell us what inner spiritual practices help to sustain you. So first, why not prayer? And then we'll get to the heart of Shira.
You might have to repeat the second half of the question again, because
Okay.
I am in my 50s, so I forget things like right away. But okay. This book is not an intro to Judaism book, right? So it is a book that anyone can use. Like this book, this is apparently what you're supposed to do when you're on book tour, which is put the book behind you. I don't know if that's...
Put your book up here. So
I know, thank you. I said, next to your book, I was saying to Josh's book is a book I took with me to shul every single Shabbos. Not that I would ever get bored at shul when I was a Jew in the pew, and it's just such a great book. But okay. The book was meant to be modeled. I mean, if I'm being totally honest with you, Josh, it was meant to be modeled on like a Jewish version of Marie Kondo, right? So if like Marie Kondo is the Japanese art of tidying up, this is the Jewish art of making meaning. How can you make meaning in your everyday life? Like I write about very few things here, very, very few things that are uniquely Jewish, right? That like, I mentioned Kashrut gets like a sentence, right? Each holiday, I did go through it at the end. Just about every holiday is mentioned, but they are mentioned in the context of something else, right? They're not, and so prayer is not given its own chapter, although I do talk about prayer in different parts of the book, a little bit in the chapter on the body and so on and so forth. But no, you're right. Like this is a book. I mean, there's actually a paragraph in the beginning where I'm like, okay, guys, every once in a while, I say this word, God. Don't freak out. Like if you see the word God and it freaks you out, just put a different word in there for it, like love or the universe. So it really wasn't meant for people for whom prayer is natural or even desirable. It was meant for people for whom meaning is. And I know that those Venn diagram, like the circles overlap, but not entirely.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Is that?
Yeah, that's great. So then the second half of the question was, aside from reading my book in shul, what are some of your own inner practices, like in terms of your own inner life, that help you live this life that you've outlined, this meaningful life that you've outlined here? You talk it like I know at one point you tell a few personal stories, but like one of them I remember is something about needing to step out and sort of like center yourself, breathing exercise, and then be able to be in conversation, in a difficult conversation. So I want to hear more about that.
Yeah. I love praying. I love, this is on that way every time everything I say, it's like I'm filtering it through the prism of how from I am, according to Josh. So it's like, I'm seeing, but like, I just love being in conversation with Hashem. So Hashem and I talk all day, every day. Often I'm quite pissed at Hashem, but I believe that Hashem can take it. And so I truly believe in prayer, but I like praying in shul because I like the community piece of it, but I also like praying as I sort of walk about the world. And I'm very lucky because I'm a rabbi, I actually have access to a lot of traditional prayers because I do love traditional prayers. So I love seeing a rainbow and knowing what the prayer is over the rainbow, or I love using the restroom. I can never remember the entire prayer after using the restroom, but I can remember 20% of it. And I feel like God gets the gist of what I'm trying to say. So I pray everywhere I go. I love prayer that's sort of connected to the practicalities of life. For the last, I hope I can talk about this. Cut me off if I can't. For the last few weeks, I have been learning with Miriam. Can I talk about this?
Yeah. I mean, if it's okay with Miriam.
Okay. So Miriam has been teaching IJS. You are very, very lucky. Miriam has been teaching this extraordinary class on how, I'm nervous. I'm not going to say it correctly, but whatever. But how understanding, how we can understand anti-Semitism better, differently, more widely, using sort of our own, by understanding how Jewish internalized anti-Semitism, but also understanding how our body reacts when we encounter anti-Semitism in the world. And for me, that has been such a beautiful example of how I like to pray in the world, because we start with meditation, or we start with silence, or we start with Miriam singing her with her beautiful voice. Those are my moments of prayerfulness. Like, where am I right now? Where has anti-Semitism showed up in the last week? Where have I imagined it that it hasn't been there? Where am I grateful to God for keeping me safe? Where do I feel exposed? Like, those are all the prayerfulness. And then we go into conversations about what's actually happening out in the world. And that to me is like, that's like the chef's kiss of prayer for me, where like I can do it and like I'm centering myself and my relationship with Hashem. And then I immediately get to go and sort of be part of the larger conversation in the larger world.
Beautiful. And also a wonderful endorsement of this.
Oh my, it was so good.
I'll just say for our audience, this is part of a pilot project that we have been working on this year, developing sort of tools for more mindful responses to anti-Semitism. Shira is part of a wonderful sort of online cohort with a small select group of Jewish leaders that Miriam's been working on this with. And so we're hoping to roll this out a little further next year and bring it to a bit wider circle. So stay tuned. But that's great. That's we will use the clip of that when we write the grant proposal. That's awesome. Thank you. We've got some questions from our audience. And I'm going to save my question for the end, my last question. But so these are great. So and if you want to submit a question, just write it to Q&A, Q&A, and that'll ultimately get over here via the interwebs. So Moshe asked the question. He says, "I've come to believe that my Jewishness has grown, especially via IJS, by embracing a notion that we can all be whatever kind of Jew we want to be. Mm-hmm. We have access in our lifetimes to virtually unlimited Jewish resources, right? We really are living in, a golden age of access to Judaism, for sure. Will you speak to, this is beautiful, Moshe asks, will you speak to how we can all be Jews by choice?" And it's interesting, his name is Moshe.
Oh, right. I want to know, get Moshe on here. It's a great episode of Chutzpah, where we like bring the listeners on at the end. Okay, the questioners on at the end. I mean, look, I do think we are living in an era in which we are all Jews by choice, and whether it's because of the voluntary covenant that you were talking about earlier, Josh, or just because of like the Golden Medina and the blessing that is America, which I still believe is a blessing, even given what's going on, we have this ability to plug into Judaism in a wherever is meaningful to us, and in certain ways to pull back in the places that don't give us meaning, right? So you can be very, very involved in a prayer community, but not keep kosher. You could be very involved in a meditation community that is based in Chicago, but yourself live in Seattle. You can feel very, very strongly about Israel-Palestine, and actually even find a community that meets you exactly where you are and still welcomes you in, right? So we are living in a moment of choice. Mm-hmm. And this is the part where I get from again, Moshe. I really wish we could have a conversation about this, but I also hope that we always hold on to the sort of Franz Rosenzweigian teaching of not yet, meaning that we are plugging in exactly as we are, God willing, finding a space where we are accepted exactly as who we are. But at the same time, we are continuing to grow in our Jewish practice, which doesn't just mean observance, right? Our Jewish way of being in the world, whether it's tshuva or repentance, whether it's tzedakah, like whatever it is, we feel like we can be Jews, but we are Jews by choice, and we are Jews who continue to grow. We're not stagnant Jews.
I wonder also, I mean, this foreshadows a little bit my last question, but just, the choice, the relationship between choice on the one hand that you're totally, that you're acknowledging, of course, and responsibility that you're doubling down. And there are choices that are made for us, right? And I think for a lot of people, for October 7th was a reality check about that. And yeah, so I wonder about that. I wonder about that. But we can come back to that.
I think there are choices, but I mean, and I might be understanding, like I might be inferring different than what you're sort of implying, but I also think, and that given this moment that we're in as adults, your ability to rebuild your Judaism. I mean, this whole phrase, your Judaism, right? That's such a 25th, but the ability to rebuild your Judaism in a way that's meaningful is in 2025. I just don't think you would have been able to do that in the same way in like 1985. You wouldn't have had the internet. You
Mhm.
wouldn't have had the same sort of globalization. You would have been much more post-Holocaust. You would have had that trauma sitting even more heavily on your shoulders. And so,
Mhm.
but we really do have this ability now to be Jewish in a multiplicity of ways.
Mhm.
And so then the fear becomes that we don't, in being a choosing people, we don't then wall ourselves off, right? We don't, because we can choose to go here or there or do this or that, we don't wall ourselves out from the diversity in the Jewish people.
Yeah. All right, Harris, who always asks great questions. Uh, Harris is a regular on our daily set. So he asks, America holds two values in tension: democracy, which involves the public good, and on the other hand, rugged individualism. Does not Judaism contain a version of that tension? If so, can Judaism provide a model for bridging it? Great question.
Josh, what do you, this is such a great question. What is Judaism's take on rugged individualism? Like, where do you see that in Judaism?
I mean, you could boil this down to the first two of Hillel's questions, right? If I'm not for myself, who will be for me? There's your individualism. When I'm only for myself, what am I? Um, Bishvili nivra ha'olam, we need to, that all of us, since we're created in the divine image, need to say that the world was created for my sake. I mean, I'm not sure I would apply rugged. There is,
Like
yeah.
negligent individualism?
It's softer. It's softer. I might say it's softer, but that's what my Harris qualified. He said, does not Judaism contain a version of that tension? So I think Judaism's version might be much softer. There's much more emphasis, I think, on community and certainly obligation, right? I mean, in America, you have a language of rights. You don't have a language of duties very much. Whereas Judaism doesn't even have a language of rights. We only have a language of duties. So that's interesting.
I think this is such a great question. And by the way, I don't need to log roll too much for Chutzpah, but like we just have an episode dropping next week. Someone writes in about the Jewish approach to self-care. And so we talk about this. And one of the things I do, it's like funny, like the Washingtonian in me wants to challenge the idea of rugged individualism. Like I know that's what America thinks we are, but it's not really true. Like America, we have inherited wealth that goes from generation to generation. We have but okay, fine. I'm going to go along with it. Yeah, I do think that there is this part. I guess, I don't know, maybe some of the rugged individualism, which I know is not, maybe it comes into play with the Jewish comfort with disagreement, at least in theory. I think in reality, like our muscles are really atrophied in that front. But anyway, and this idea that we actually do believe that everyone has a certain voice, right? Like we are not there is no Jewish pope, right? Although if there was, I would vote for either you or Margles. Guys,
right, and right now there isn't a Catholic pope either. But anyway,
I'm just saying. But so the door is open. It's time. But so maybe that like the individualism is that like, and this is why so many converts who I've talked to have come to Judaism, like this idea that we actually have a right to have a voice. We have a right to disagree. Even if we live in the halachic framework, we can say like, having to put my tea bag in two separate cups on Shabbos is BS. I'm going to do it because I bought into the system, but you have a right to say it's BS, right? It's like so maybe that's where the individualism comes in. It's like the right to really be in disagreement with the other. I want to play with that.
It's a really interesting question. Thank you, Harris. It's great.
I'm just glad that none of our other Wexner classmates are are trolling us in the questions. Like
not yet. We have one classmate who is a prominent Orthodox rabbi, and I'd be curious what he says. The rabbi at the Jewish Center. Anyway, okay. So, here's a great question from Efrat, a woman named Efrat, not from someone that's not up at 3 a.m. watching us from Efrat. But anyway, Efrat is a Reform rabbi who is married to an Orthodox man. So she straddles two or more worlds too. Here's her question. What about Orthodox Judaism attracts you and attracted you? And how do you find those elements when you aren't entirely in that world? You first.
Seriously? Okay, will you answer if I answer?
What?
Will you answer after I answer?
Yeah, totally.
So a few things. And I feel actually quite vulnerable because saying this because I feel like, like the super feminist lefty people who I imagine to be part of the community on this call right now are going to not like what I'm about to say. So I still dabble in Orthodoxy, meaning like I have no problem davening in a minyan with a mechitza. Like I have no problem, like I won't put on a long skirt, but like I will cosplay as an Orthodox Jew in order to get my fix. So that is one way that I do it. And what I love about Orthodoxy, I love davening where people actually know how to daven. And I have been blessed thus far to live in communities like Washington or like Philadelphia, where you have egalitarian communities that actually know how that know how to daven. And so I'm able to get some of my fix from that as well. But also like, I just fight this idea that a lot of the practices of Orthodoxy need to be restricted to the Orthodox, which most Orthodox would say they don't. Like meaning that text study, anyone can do Jewish text study together. But that is, I really, in a way, like I get to pick the best of Orthodoxy. I'm putting that in scare quotes because, but I get to pick the best of Orthodoxy without getting mired in the politics of like, the gender difference and the queer issue and all of that sort of stuff. So I have the best of all the worlds, I think. What about you, Josh?
That's interesting. I'm a guy, I daven at a modern Orthodox shul. I went to an Orthodox rabbinical school, and I lead an organization that, overwhelmingly serves people who are in liberal communities. So I'm also, watching in multiple worlds, and I think I would part of it is just like, where I come from and what I feel, comfortable with in terms of my own personal practice. And I do think there's a wonderful there's some wonderful things that can happen when, there's a level of textual familiarity and learning, right, that is present in many Orthodox communities that is a beautiful thing. And so those are all wonderful. And also like my fix is the other direction. Like, one of my favorite things was like when I was a Hillel rabbi.
Yeah.
The first 20 years ago when I was first a Hillel rabbi and I had to do Reform services for, high holidays. And like, whoa, you can do like a guitar and you don't have to do the whole thing. And you could pick all the best parts. And like, it was like amazing. It was like such a joy to like put this together every year. And then to go over to, the Orthodox Minyan to daven Musaf, where, I knew how that was going to go. And so, this is a wonderful sort of piece of pluralism that we get to live in these different worlds. And Efrat, I wish you and your husband lots of hatzlacha, success in navigating.
I think that's Josh. You and I, like, I'm not saying no one else. I know other people too, but like you and I were trained in the art of pluralism in a very intentional and specific way that allows us to wander in and out of different types of Jewish communities with ease. Yeah. I'm not a big denominationalist. Like I am. So I'm just not. I'm just so maybe that is also helpful. Like in a way, pluralism is my denomination. And
Mm.
so I don't have some of the hangups. I don't mean that sounds
You're
disparaging.
you're 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 in the just Jewish category. I mean, your book is definitely a just Jewish book.
Oh,
Uh,
I am very much in the just
yeah.
category.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Anne Marie asks a question. What did you wish you had put in the book that didn't make the cut? And on the flip side was what was put in during the writing or editing process that you weren't planning on, but you love it there.
Oh my God, that's such a good question. Okay, what did I? Um, this book is an exercise in not letting the perfect be the enemy of the good enough. There are. I think that I could have chosen 10 other sort of Jewish meaning making practices that I didn't include in the book. Like, for instance, like what are other Jewish meaning making practices that um, I could have written more about food that I did, because I do think food, all jokes aside about like Jewish meals and stuff, like the one, I'll tell you, here's the real thing. There was one chapter that I failed at. The chapter that I failed at, I tried to write it and I couldn't get it. And it might surprise you, is a chapter on the Jewish home, like the Jewish approach to home.
Hmm.
Because I really do feel like we have a specific approach to home, like with the altar, the table is our altar, but I couldn't get it in a way that, first of all, felt universal enough, like for
Hmm.
people, like it was felt so Jewish. And the material culture part was really hard, because when you're talking about a Jewish home, you're talking about buying a lot of things, all the
Yeah.
things,
Candlesticks, mezuzahs, all sorts of
all the things. Then you're talking about a lot of, what did Vanessa Ox call them? She has that articulate objects, like she has that list, like things
okay.
that are specifically Jewish. You wouldn't know if you'd never met a Jew, you wouldn't know what a mezuzah was. Like,
Mhm.
so that is the one thing that, like, if I had another month to write this book, they basically gave
Hmm.
me like 4 months to write the book. If I had another month, I would have liked to figure out the chapter on. I would have liked to figure out the chapter on the Jewish home.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Um, let's see. We're gonna wrap up soon. Okay. There's a couple more. There's a couple more questions we're gonna get to. All right. So one is a question about humanistic Judaism. Uh, Beth
Nice.
Cousins, is Beth Cousins on the call? Okay. Anyway, another classmate who grew up in Rabbi Sherwin Wine's temple. Susan says, I'm a rabbi in the humanistic movement and would likely not be in any Jewish community if I had to say words I don't believe. I
Yep.
love chutzpah. She's a fan.
Oh,
Love
that's so nice.
chutzpah.
Thank you.
And also think it's important for people who are uncomfortable with God language to do Jewish. I'm assuming your views about finding meaning through Judaism would include humanistic Judaism. Yes?
Totally. I mean, let me say a few things. First of all, I am so God, like me. So like Shira, but like if you are someone who is not like that, then of course you can find meaning in humanistic Judaism. And I would say there is a way, one of the big, and maybe I can ask you a question now, Josh. It's like one of the big, I don't know if it's hypocrisies or like we Jews pretend, no, we Jews believe that words are important. Every word of the Torah, like we turn it and turn it and turn it and turn it. But then when it comes to davening and people are like, oh, I don't believe this, we're like, no, just say it. It's fine. Like just say it in the language you don't understand. It's going to be fine. And I feel like the humanist Jews are the only ones who are like, yeah, no, that doesn't. I'm gonna be consistent. It's not hypocritical. It's inconsistent, right? Humanist Jews say, I'm going to be consistent. I believe words
To
matter.
give a little credit. I mean, if that happens in translation with some of the other movements, with every movement actually, right? It'll
But
happen.
it's
But in terms of what people are actually reciting in Hebrew, right?
right.
I mean, the changes, how much people are willing to change there is not nearly as plastic. I agree with you. It's not nearly as plastic as in English. But the
So
humanistic Judaism like said, yeah, let's go for it.
we're not gonna say it if it
Yeah,
doesn't ring true.
that's
No,
right.
so we had yeah. So yes, of course.
You're on board.
And
Okay.
thank you for listening to Chutzpah, because
Okay.
it's super fun. I okay, we don't talk about the podcast anymore, but
All right. Well, people should subscribe. You should listen. It's great.
We had one of my favorite episodes ever last week. It was so for people who don't know, it's a call-in show. People will write for advice, and we had this 21-year-old who wrote in to tell us that her mother never taught her about the Holocaust. Did she have a bad mother? And that mother was me. And it turns out I'd never really taught my kids about the Holocaust.
Did your daughter actually write in?
No, I made
To
her.
the show, you made it up. Okay, all right. Okay.
But it was still a good conversation.
Wow. Okay, so everyone should subscribe. All right. Let's see. So here we go. We're going to do last two questions, which will combine into one. As you discussed, you have lived in Washington, D.C. for a long time, and you were the spiritual leader of one of its prominent synagogues, Sixth and I. It strikes me that this book articulates a liberal American Judaism for today, right? This is a very American book. Responsibility, community, inclusivity. Here's what you read on page 5, quote, "One of the blessings of 21st century globalization is that it allows us entree into other cultures and traditions. You no longer have to be Jewish to do Jewish. All are welcome in our community of practice." So as you note later in the book, you wrote much of it before October 7th, and you certainly wrote it all before the first 100 days of the second Trump administration. So I'm wondering, I mean, the word globalization itself is like, there's a tremendous irony in saying that today. I'm wondering how you're feeling about it today. Is there anything you would change in your message, anything you double down on, something else? And here's where I'm going to combine. Anne's question for you was, Rabbi Stutman says she loves prayers. In Fiddler on the Roof, they ask the rabbi, if the rabbi has a prayer for the Tsar, does she have a prayer for the current leadership? So you can handle that how you will. But let's first, just in light of so much has changed in the conditions, right? Since this book took root and shape in your mind. And maybe this goes back also to sort of Anne Marie's question of like, is there anything that you would double down on, or you feel like, maybe I'd change that a little bit?
Yeah, right. The whole book was written in the shadow of October 7th, right? I don't talk about Israel at all in the book, for a number of reasons, which we can talk about like the next time we have this conversation, because I don't want to end on like us or anything else. I didn't, these last 15 months, to be more, have had so much cruelty in them, so much base cruelty in them, that there is a way that I would double down on this book, because I do think one of this book tries to help us remember is that kindness matters, chesed matters, like the way that we show up in the world matters. It matters. I even tell that really trite but beautiful story about the starfish getting thrown back, and like it matters. And so that is a way that I would double down. I feel, these last 15, 16 months, there have been so many moments where I felt like powerless beyond measure. Like I'm going to sign another letter? I'm going to go to another protest? Like what? I'm going to like set another table? Like what? And I do think one of the things this book can do is it can give you steps forward. Are they going to like keep families together in the United States? Probably not, right? Are these actions going to bring the hostages home? Probably not. But you also have to believe that it's like it's tikkun olam, right? Like every spark lifted up changes the energy in this world a tiny bit. And maybe over the course of our lives and the lives of our children afterwards, these sparks can combine to create something new and beautiful. So, I feel like I'm ending like some sort of huckster, but I feel like a book like this is needed more than ever, because we need each other more than ever. And we need to show kindness to people who are like us and people who are not like us. And I mean that religiously and also politically, because I just don't know how else we're going to move forward.
Beautiful. That's a good place to wrap it up, I think. Sure, this has been so much fun. We should do it again. And we'll put the link to buy the book again in the chat, maybe in case you didn't get the first time. Everybody should buy it.
Thank you. Yeah.
And thank you so much, Miriam. We're going to bring Miriam back up for a
Great.
little laughter, color commentary. Take us out, and we'll wrap up. Thank you.
Oh, Shira, Josh, thank you for such an engaging and lively conversation. What a treat to be together. And I also want to thank Natalie Rushinoff and Molly Easton for assisting in this program. And thank you to all of you for joining us. Please plan to join us again. We hope to see you next time. Many blessings. Take good care. Thank you, everybody.